Mateusz Gamrot edged out a razor-close unanimous decision against Arman Tsarukyan at the Apex last night. And it goes to show you just how deep the lightweight division is in the UFC. You get a fight night main event between the number 12 and number 11 ranked fighter in the division, and it was an absolute tactical masterpiece. I am Alex Donno, alongside, as always, here on Combat Center and on 5 Reasons Sports YouTube. Johnathan Ramlakhan is with me. Johnny, how you doing, sir?
Doing good. Had a last good night of UFC fights, and then the night before had some good PFL fights as well, where we got Anthony Pettis submitted in a reverse twister. Not something you see very often, but pretty exciting. Pretty exciting weekend so far.
What you call it, a hell of a weekend for fighting. And down below, we got our man, myth, and legend, Frank Zaffere. Frank, how are you?
Good, Jonathan. If you want to see unique submissions, just come watch me get choked out 50 different ways at 8 p.m. each weeknight.
It's like a new version of the show, 1,000 Ways to Die. It's 1,000 Ways to Frank get choked out.
That's right.
So heading into the main event last night, Arman Tsarukyan was a sizable favorite. I actually lost a wager on him, which is dumb because I don't usually bet fighters with the odds like that, but it was minus 270 around the time I wagered on Arman Tsarukyan. I think it was minus 275 right at the time that the fight started. And guys, in the first 2 rounds, Tsarukyan looked in control. So a lot of back and forth, especially when it came to the scrambles in the ground game. It was fantastic. Anytime the fight hit the deck, you would have unbelievable transitions and reversals. It was really high-level stuff on the ground. But I thought the difference in the first 2 rounds in favor of Tsarukyan was the body kicks that he was landing. Right? Both guys landed some punches. Both guys had some awesome transitions on the ground. But in those first 2 rounds, some really good body kicks by Tsarukyan. And so as you went into round 3, now this was a 5-round main event fight, of course, but as you went into round 3, the live betting odds got so stacked in Tsarukyan's favor. He was minus 650 heading into the 3rd round. And I thought what we saw, Jonathan, and I'll start with you on how the tide turned in this fight, because this was an unbelievable, I think, show of perseverance by Mateusz Gamrot, because, nothing really dramatic happened to turn the fight in his favor. Didn't nearly knock Arman's head into the 5th row or anything, but really started to not eat and absorb as many of those body kicks, started to do some really good groundwork, started to land some heavy punches. I just thought he was the fresher fighter in the late rounds.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that last sentence. He looked like the fresher fighter. He was a guy who was a 2-division KSW champion who's had the 5-round experience before, and he's talked about he's going to drag Arman into the deep waters. So as far as the game plan goes for Gamrot, this was exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to make Arman, tire himself out in those first 2 rounds, which we saw a lot of good sprawls, a lot of good balance from Arman. But as we know, that takes a lot of energy as well. So Mateusz did a really good job of, in that 3rd round, just being able to hold on to him and latch onto him, right? He was able to get some takedowns, but it wasn't like he was taking him down and ground and pounding. It was more he was controlling the position of where Arman's body was. He had a good hand lock around the back, and he was doing a good job controlling him. Now, the 3rd round, like you said, was definitely Gamrot's round, in my opinion. The 4th round was very, very questionable. All 3 judges scored that 4th round for Gamrot. And I can understand how you would score that with the end of the round. Maybe he ends on the back. But most of that round, Arman was landing great body kicks, and he dropped him with a spinning back fist. There was a knockdown in that fight. And Arman, whether Gamrot had his back or not, he was fighting the hands for getting that choke, right? Gamrot definitely was in a good position, but he didn't have Arman in the same type of danger that Arman did with the back fist. So it's tough for me to give this fight to Gamrot. I do think he had a hell of a performance. I think the performance he had was the one he wanted to, as far as making it the late game fight his round and letting Arman kind of burn out early. But it's tough for me to give Gamrot this fight. When all 3 judges scored it at 48-47, I put my hands in the air because I was like, okay, Arman won this fight. I was excited. I was like, all right, Arman got this done. 3-2. Gamrot got, maybe 4-5. Or 3-5. But Arman definitely got 1, 2, and 4. Close fight. Don't think Gamrot gets that Gaethje fight yet. That's too far for him. But the Sheffield, like you said, shows the depth of the division.
Didn't he get him twice in the 4th round? Didn't he also knock him off his feet with a calf kick? Didn't,
That's right, he
That was the
did.
5th round. That was the
Yeah.
beginning of the 5th round, I believe.
oh, I
Oh,
thought that was
okay.
in the fourth. Yeah, I thought he put him. I thought he put him on his butt twice. So
Maybe they don't count the knockdown maybe as much for a leg kick because it's more of a balance thing is maybe what I'm thinking. But it was a hefty shot though. I remember the one you're talking about, Frank.
yeah, and I think you should get credit for that because the reason he
Yeah.
fell was from pain and it hurt because it landed well and you were trying to get your calf out of the way. So it's hard to stand up when both your feet are in the air. So yeah, I agree with you, Jonathan. But but what Alex said was true. I thought that cardio won the day. I thought that 5 round experience won the day. These are the kinds of fights where the method by which our sport is judged is hugely inadequate because I honestly from fight to fight don't know what they're giving more more points for. I don't know what they're giving, you know what I mean? I don't know if
Right.
it's sometimes I feel like I'm watching, sometimes I feel like it's pride. Sometimes I feel like it's an overall perception of how the round went. You know what I mean? And not an
Mm-hmm.
actual scoring system. Sometimes I think they're giving a huge amount of points for what they call octagon control, which is deceiving sometimes. Oh, the guy's pressing forward or whatever. Well, he's getting hit in the head 100 times too. So I don't know, but this fight makes me think about how much reform or improvement of system needs to happen in judging.
Yeah, and another thing that I was thinking about when I was watching the fight for a second time is that it did look like I'm just thinking about what the judges might have been thinking because it did look like Sarukian's face was wearing more damage, which and a lot of times it just really comes down to how someone's face responds to getting hit, right? Because certain guys wear damage more than others. Because actually, I mean, if you look at the striking stats, total and significant strikes, they both favored Arman Tsarukyan, yet I thought he looked like he was wearing more damage from the punches and the kicks that he absorbed. So maybe that went to influence the judges as well. And it was one of those things, and I really appreciate what Jonathan was saying about kind of how he looked and scored the fight because this one was a really, really tough one for me. I was expecting Tsarukyan to get his hand raised. I thought, hey, this is probably going to be a split decision because I did appreciate how close it was. It was also the types of fights where I don't envy the judges because I think when something is this close, it is really, 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 really difficult to score. Okay. And so this was the number 12 fighter in the division in Mateusz Gamrot beating the number 11 fighter in the division. And so number 12 being victorious, he has asked for a fight with Justin Gaethje, who's a multiple time lightweight title contender. He's currently ranked number 3 in the UFC lightweight rankings. So I mean, Frank, I'll start with you, and then Jonathan, you can weigh in. Is that a realistic call out, or is that way too big of a jump? You think when we also have in that mix, Michael Chandler, Beneil Dariush at 5 and 6, Rafael dos Anjos at number 7. I mean, Conor McGregor is ranked number 8, but who the hell knows what he wants to do? Tony Ferguson number 9. Like it's a really loaded top 10 in the lightweight division. Do you think Mateusz Gamrot deserves this big of a leap?
100% yes. And I'm so glad you ran through that list
Mm-hmm.
because the UFC right now has a list predicated on sellability. These
Ah,
guys right here, this is the future of the division. Like, holy shit, are they good, right? And you got Makhachev too, who can't seem to, it's taken him forever to punch through. I'm telling you, these guys beat any one of those guys that you mentioned.
hmm.
And so it's just a matter of when the UFC is ready to take a hugely sellable asset and let them get their ass kicked by somebody that nobody's heard of before. That's what's going on here with the rankings. The lightweight division has never been more stacked, but like those names you ran through, like Rafael dos Anjos, seriously. I mean, the days for them have passed. Gamrot was right when he talked about a new generation of fighter. This lightweight division and these people coming in right now into this division, they are scaring the shit out of people. Nobody wants to fight them in those spots that you mentioned ahead. And I would pick either one of the two combatants last night against probably most of the people ranked 3 through 10.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, I mean, if you look at Tony Ferguson, he's not a top 15 lightweight anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, let's all be honest. He's lost to people, in the way that the ranking system goes is he'll work his way down until he drops out. But I mean, let's be honest. He's not a top 15 guy. Conor McGregor, not a top 15 guy. RDA, while still is good, I don't think he's a top 15 guy with all this new young blood. I mean, with all this young, like you said, Frank, there's a lot of good fighters in this division. Like,
Mhm.
even when you're looking at some of the unranked fighters, like, man, they're going to work their way up and they're going to be coming soon. They're going to be coming soon for these guys up top. So, yeah, I agree with you, man. I think that you throw him against maybe a Justin Gaethje, or you throw him against one of those guys that are more quote unquote sellable, because all of these guys, to your point again, Frank, are marketable guys, right? Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, like all those guys are just sellable guys. Like that's all they
Mhm.
are. So when is Dana going to take that risk and put one of those sellable guys against one of these up and hungry tigers that are going to come and probably beat them? And that's what you have
Mhm.
to do. That's just the way the UFC works. Like that's business. And in pro wrestling, you always let the guy that's been a longtime legend lose to the up and comer on his way out. So that way he gets that rub. You need some of these guys to get some of that rub too, if you want to continue to make the UFC division good moving forward as far as marketability.
I like it. Last thing on Mateusz Gamrot, he was told by Khabib Nurmagomedov that Khabib predicts that one day he's going to be fighting for the belt against future champion, perhaps Islam Makhachev, who's Khabib's protege. Could you see that fight happening, Jonathan, within the next couple of years? Because honestly, I'm not going to say it won't happen. And certainly Gamrot is an up and coming guy. I'm still not sleeping on Tsarukyan, right? But I think we could probably see that within the next 2 years or so. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that Gamrot's skills are very, very good. I mean, you have to look at the way that history tells, right? He's a phenomenal wrestler, both offensively and defensively, and that's going to make him a really, really tough matchup against a lot of people. And I think that'll make him a pretty tough matchup against Islam as well. I mean, if you can't really use the transitive property in MMA, but
Right.
Arman Tsarukyan had an amazing performance against Islam in his first fight out, and he showed another good, defense or wrestling performance tonight again. And Gamrot even still like out wrestled him a little bit. So I would be really, really interested to see how those wrestling scrambles would go between Gamrot and Islam. But I think with the way that the things are going and as far as it goes, these guys are all on a collision course. I think Arman is on his way up there as well as one of those guys to go ahead and fight for the title, because they're just too good for them to keep away from them too long.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, yeah, the likelihood of it happening is real. Whether or not it happens in 2 years has everything to do with what Jonathan just emphasized in the previous comment, where how quickly will the UFC let the shine of their aging stars, who most of whom have lost to Charles Oliveira, by the way, how
Yeah.
how quickly will he allow them to pick up some of that shine and become big marketable names themselves? Because they're the best in the division right now. These guys.
So another fight I wanted to talk about, gentlemen. This was an absolute destruction, and I enjoyed every second of it. Shavkat Rakhmonov just ragdolling Neil Magny, ends up getting the submission. It was basically right before the bell at the end of the second round. I think there was like 3 seconds left on the second round clock before the horn sounded. It was a buzzer beater, but it was complete one way traffic for Rakhmonov before that finish. Like I'm looking at the stats, guys. I don't even remember Neil Magny landing 21 total strikes or 11 significant strikes. All that I can remember is complete body control, takedowns, top control from Rakhmonov, who controlled, let me see the percentage. He controlled, I think, 79% of the fight. This was a coming out party, I thought, Frank, for Rakhmonov. And this is another passing of the torch thing. I know Neil Magny he's that veteran who's been around forever. This guy is not a slouch. I mean, to beat Neil Magny like that is really, really impressive. And I thought Shavkat Rakhmonov, if you didn't know his name before last night, you certainly know it now.
Yeah, he's a monster, but in a bigger picture, guys, like this part of the world is terrifying for
Yeah.
mixed martial arts right now. I remember a time when it was all about Brazil, and now it's all about this part of the world, and it's all the names. I mean, like honestly, if I was on the UFC roster right now, anybody whose name ends in something of, I'm going the other way.
Yeah, to your point, Frank. I mean, like this was just like you said, a one-sided affair. And Neil Magny was the guy that was kind of calling for the Hamzat Chimaev fight too. that fight
Yeah.
wouldn't have gone much different than how this one has. And I think Shavkat is one of those guys kind of on the sleeping on the radar because what is he 16-0 now?
Yeah.
16-0, and he's finished every single one of his fights. I think 8 of them is coming to first round. He should be talked out as much as Hamzat, in my opinion. He has the skills on the feet and he has the skills on the ground. Like this guy is a legitimate threat to the division, and he's called out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And I think he's we talk about Arman and we talk about Gamrot being in a future collision course. I think Shavkat and Hamzat could be on a collision course for the future because these are just two young blood guys that are still so good and still have so much to grow before they actually hit their primes. I think, man, Shavkat can be a legitimate threat to this division and could be a future champion at 170.
Guys, can
Go
I
ahead.
can I ask just real quick? Are these guys like, are they a legit threat to Usman? Like, are his days
Yes.
numbered?
Yeah.
I was gonna say yes because of not just because of two things, right? One, obviously, they're gonna get better as Kamaru ages, and we know that Kamaru's knee isn't 100%. Like, he's talked about maybe calling an early career because of that knee. So I think there will be a time a year or two from now where we'll see the passing of that guard, where Usman is gonna get ragdolled by one of these Dagestani or, like you said, that area of the world wrestling.
All about the Balkans. It's all about Russia. And like within 5 years,
Armenia,
every champion is gonna be from the Balkans, Russia,
Yeah.
Armenia. It's unbelievable. And yeah, I had to give it some pause, but I agree with Jonathan. I think at some point you're gonna start to see a little bit just weathering over time in Kamaru Usman as you have guys like Hamzat ascending through the ranks. So yeah, I totally agree. Guys, make sure you do us a solid. You may be watching us on the 5 Reasons Sports Network YouTube channel, which is awesome. Make sure you subscribe to that. But we have a dedicated fight channel. We are simulcasting on Combat Center. Make sure you hit subscribe. If you're interested in fight talk, Combat Center is where you get all of that. Not only do you get these shows where the 3 of us mix it up, but Johnathan Ramlakhan provides a ton of extra content and interviews throughout the week. So make sure you subscribe to Combat Center. Hit that thumbs up button on this video as well. Huge shout out and thank you to Johnathan Ramlakhan and to Frank Zaffere. I am Alex Donno. We will talk to you guys midweek. We'll break down UFC 276 later on this week right here on Combat Center. See ya.